All right, well, thank you everybody for signing in today. I hope everybody enjoyed their Memorial Day and Memorial Day weekend. I know it's a little hard to tune in early on Tuesday when it feels like a Monday, but we appreciate you all joining us today for this overview of the Greenville-Spartanburg International Airport and their cargo operations and outlook for the future. Just a few notes real quick. We are recording this and we will make it available on our YouTube page once we get everything edited through and everything. Before we start, I just want to say thank you to everybody that tuned into our export workshop last week that we hosted with the U.S. Commercial Service. And we thought that a good way to follow up our export workshop after we went over some topics about exporting products, we thought it'd be good to give you an example of how that can be done, or a way that, or a place that can be done through. So that's why we wanted to host this sort of as a sequel to that workshop. So thank you if you tuned in last week. If you didn't, we will be making some of that material public as well. But with that, I'm going to hand it over to Dave Edwards, the president and CEO of the Greenville-Spartanburg International Airport, to welcome you all. Dave?
Thank you, Stephen, and happy to be here this morning with the SC Aerospace Group, and again, appreciate the opportunity to have some of my team members here talk a little bit about the airport this morning. And with that, I'd really just like to introduce both Nathan Gardner and Steve Schellenberg. Nathan Gardner is actually our Director of Aviation Services and also oversees our kind of what our private sector company, which at least in view, Cerulean Aviation, which is a department of our organization at GSP. And Steve Schellenberg is helping us with some consulting efforts and trying to build our cargo market at GSP. And Steve's been working with us now for, I think, a little over a year, doing a terrific job. And I know both Nathan and Steve are going to do a great job today in giving you a wonderful brief on kind of where we've been and where we think we're headed, and maybe how some of you on the call could fit into the future plans at GSP. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Nathan and Steve and let them run with this today. And I know this is going to be a great presentation and hopefully some great discussion. Thank you very much.
Thanks, David. Appreciate the introduction. This is Steve Schellenberg. I'm with IMS Worldwide. We're, as David indicated, a consulting firm. We're involved in global logistics, supply chains, and foreign trade zones. So our clients are the major freight forwarders, the major beneficial cargo owners, and folks who move and route cargo on an international basis. And Nathan and I will share our conversation as we go through this, but let me give you some background on where we are in global air cargo today. As most of you know, since you had to cancel your trip to Paris last summer, air traffic and global lift has changed dramatically since COVID came upon us. Normally in the world up until COVID, about 94% of the world's cargo moved on the ocean and 6% by air. The problem is that 60% of that 6% moved in the belly hold of a passenger airplane. So when you flew to Charles de Gaulle or to Rome or wherever you were flying to in the EU or Asia, there was a lot of cargo in the belly hold of that passenger airline. Well, that lift essentially evaporated. The rest of the story is that the world's air cargo operations are still trying to sort out how best to support the demand for cargo, given the fact that that much lift was immediately gone. And we still had to find a way to move cargo. Well, a couple things happened. Obviously, with the grounding of the passenger fleet, rates went through the roof. If you move, route, control, or pay for international freight, you know that. The other thing that happened is that lift became a very, very tight in terms of capacity capacity to move the amount of freight that needed to be moved as we shifted from belly to from passenger belly to on-demand cargo. The result of that is that a lot of freight has been trying to go through the traditional gateways. Those gateways are in Chicago, in JFK in New York, in Atlanta next door, in LAX on the West Coast, and to some extent in Miami, although Miami is more of a gateway to Central and South America. Those gateways have become extremely congested. The result is that it's very challenging to predict the availability of your freight as it moves through these gateways. And one of the things that we see our capability to do, and the vision for Greenville, is to create a predictable solution for global air freight in the middle of an area where there is significant or better coverage in terms of population, transportation, and logistics than can be achieved by Atlanta, and I'll show you that. So what we've seen in the last year is people who needed to move freight basically taking a passenger airline, a passenger airplane, and either removing the seats or outfitting the seat area with nets and loading the belly full of freight and flying what we call freighters around the world to support the demand for freight. The story really is about Greenville GSP as an alternative cargo gateway in the Southeast US. And as we lay the story out, you'll see why it can be such a successful tool for people who move or route or control or pay for international freight. The vision is simple, create a value that resonates with users. And that is simply this, to create something that gives a better speed to market. And speed to market, when you're paying $6 a kilo or $4 a kilo, or in some cases $12 a kilo, depending on where you were in the continuum of the last year, for air cargo, you need to make sure that you have a system that provides you a consistent, predictable outcome. And today's gateways do not provide that for the freighter operator or for the freight services provider, the logistics provider who supports that business. So the reality is this project goes well beyond South Carolina, despite the fact that there are aerospace services providers across the state. We've already experienced freight moving well beyond South Carolina, as far away as Texas, and as far away as Chicago. In fact, Columbus, Ohio, and JFK all are areas where we either support delivery of freight from GSP or freight moves into GSP for movement on the existing lift out of South Carolina. The value proposition is very straightforward. Create a predictable solution as a global gateway. And one of the reasons that Stephen and I started this conversation, and I had him out on the ramp a couple of weeks ago to talk about and observe in person, up close, global logistics in his backyard at GSP Airport. The requirement is that I find out who are the people in South Carolina who would benefit by having this service at GSP and taking advantage of it. I know you folks in Charleston lost your BA flight to Heathrow last year, and it's been a struggle to find a gateway for that freight that's consistent. We want to build that platform at GSP that provides support even when the passenger service resumes, whenever that is, and I'm not sure I know what that answer is. Nathan, you want to talk about where we are today? If you'll unmute, please, sir, and I'll give you the next 3 slides.
All right, thanks, Steve. It's good to be with you all today. Thank you so much. In conjunction with what Steve has been sharing, really the value proposition for GSP has been proven through the Senator Project, which began back in 2016, late 2016 in November. We began servicing twice weekly service to Hahn, Germany, with 747 freighter service. We quickly increased the frequency from twice to 3 times to 4 times. Now we're up to essentially daily service here in 2021 between GSP and Frankfurt Hahn. And this service has proven valuable beyond just certain automotive manufacturers in the upstate. I think that they provided the critical mass to get this project started. But what we've seen is that Senator has been able to add customers to their portfolio, and this value proposition has been seen by many others as a result. Can you advance to the next screen? So in 2019, September of 2019, we moved into a new cargo building. As you see here in the picture shown, we moved out of an old belly cargo facility that was less than 30,000 square feet. We had to start somewhere, and those were the facilities that we had. That, along with a single hard stand parking location for a wide body aircraft. But as the service grew, we quickly began a construction project to accommodate the growth. And what you see is first of all, the apron, 17-acre apron capable of accommodating 3 Boeing 747-8 freighters simultaneously. So the largest apron on the airport at GSP. And then in the background, you see 110,000 square foot facility. Again, just finished in September of 2019, 10,000 square feet of office space, 100,000 square feet of warehouse space. Senator leases the left half from the perspective of this picture of the warehouse, and then Cerulean Aviation operates out of the right half of the building. You'll notice that on the right side of the picture, that the apron continues beyond the end of the building. Well, the board here at GSP just in their most recent meeting authorized a expansion project for this facility. We're growing at such a rate that we already need to expand this facility. This facility was designed with knockout panels on this end of the building. And so we're going to begin that expansion project very soon, hoping to have that completed by the end of next summer. You can advance to the next slide. Here you see the landside portion of the facility. Again, this is where we provide the speed to market that Steve was referring to, whereas in Chicago or even sometimes in Atlanta, it might be days before the freight which arrived on a given aircraft actually hits the road and is en route to the final consignee. We're able to make that happen within hours here at GSP. And we're proud of what we've been able to accomplish to this point, and looking forward to the value that we can create for the community in the region beyond in the coming years.
So this is the existing route that that is currently supported by Senator. It is a scheduled service between Hahn, Frankfurt, Germany, and GSP. Occurs at least once a day, sometimes twice a day. As Nathan indicated, while we started with an automotive focus, has expanded well beyond that. And while it started as essentially an upstate focus, it has expanded well beyond that as well, to where it influences freight from across the southeast of the United States as well as from across South Carolina. A couple of pictures of the operations. If you haven't been on the ramp, here's an invitation to you to contact Nathan or myself and come out in person and have a look at what we do on the ramp. Stephen can attest to the value of seeing it up close and personal. We've serviced the Antonov, the big airplane on the right. Those of you who are airplane junkies know that's the biggest thing in the world that flies freight. Obviously, the Dreamlifter's been in town as well. And the area on the top left picture, there's a white area. I'll roll my cursor there. That's the building that Nathan showed you can be expanded to add the extra additional 50,000 square feet. And then on this side of the ramp, there's an opportunity to build a mirror facility. So ultimately you can get to 300,000 square feet. And if we're successful, that's going to happen sooner or later. And obviously, we think we have a solution that resonates well with air users in the region. So what we've tried to do is define a way for partners in the aerospace to, first of all, learn what we're doing, have access to the dedicated services that we're providing. We want to create the gateway in South Carolina to keep the jobs and infrastructure in place. But there's two things that I want to talk about specifically. First of all, I want to make sure that you're aware that you have access to air cargo and that it's available to you. And then I'm going to come ask you for contact information in your organization about the people who manage, route, choose, or select or pay for air cargo, so that we have a roster of users that's realistic, first of all, but also provides us with access to be able to advise prospects and users across South Carolina when we add new routes, when we add new capability. So that's a two-way street. We want to show you and tell you what we're doing, and that's the purpose of this introduction. We also want to make sure that we know and understand what your requirements are, so that as we build out our capability, we build it so that it works for the people who need it in South Carolina. In the airport business, the FAA requires you to build a long-term plan. So every 5 to 7 years, airports are required to build a master plan. This master plan simply shows the commitment to cargo. Again, my cursor, if you follow it, lands on the white building as it is today. I'll bring it back over. That's the existing air cargo facility. And so there's a clear commitment within the airport infrastructure and staff to continue to grow and expand air cargo as a commodity that supports the growth of the airport, but also supports the growth of infrastructure and logistics services around the airport. Now, there's only two things in this slide that are worthwhile. The second bullet says, we started 6 years ago and I was involved in that project in Columbus. Many of you have followed that or know that what's going on in Columbus. Started with one carrier on one lane 6 years ago. Pre-COVID, they were up to 26 scheduled global freighters per week. The last bullet's what resonates probably more closely with my friends in the real estate industry who build and deliver buildings. But in 5 years, 31 million square feet of warehouse space is developed and absorbed. And I recently read last Thursday that there are another 9 million square feet of spec building in development in Columbus. So the opportunity for the creation of jobs and infrastructure and opportunities and new companies, this is a great tool to recruit new companies to the marketplace, which I've shared with all of the 7 alliances around South Carolina already. So they're aware of what we're creating as well. The inland port is important. Those of you who use the inland port know that it's already congested. It's where the red dot is on the top of the picture. That will be expanded. Obviously, it's close by. It's a worthwhile tool because it is a place that brings in major global freight forwarders who will do the ocean work and do the warehousing and distribution work. And we'll also have the requirement from time to time to do air cargo. It's that 6% that I want to have people who move cargo make the choice to use our facilities rather than facilities in Atlanta or truck to Chicago, which is typically what they do today. The inland port is going to expand. I think the dirt's already been shoveled for the next expansion. And I think by the end of next year, we should see that completed. For those of you who are in the business of moving freight internationally, I would love to hear from you if you use a freight forwarder or a 3PL, or call it what you like, a freight partner. These are the ones that are the biggest in the world. They're not the only ones in the world. There are a lot of niche service providers. But when I talk to companies around South Carolina, the first question I ask is, who is your freight services provider? And how do you manage routing decisions? And how do I get in front of the person who manages your freight so that I can tell them what we're doing in South Carolina and get their support? Because usually it takes some time to get those routings changed. But for the real estate folks, again, and that's not y'all, but for the real estate folks, this is an important roster of prospects. This is a slide that just shows the occupier in airports. 3PLs is typically 25%. If I would have told you 5 years ago that e-commerce was going to be 27% of the occupiers of space around an airport, you'd have looked at me like I had rocks in my head. Some of you probably still will do that, but that number is going to continue to change, and we're going to see the pressure on the global air industry continue because of the growth and expansion of global e-commerce. A nod to Jim Newsom and his team. This will be a significant game changer in South Carolina because it will focus on the capabilities we have to bring in and manage the largest ships in the world, and also add infrastructure that will support expansion of South Carolina's ports upwards of another 2 million TEUs, again, which is the choice of mode for global shipping. But that expansion will drive additional air cargo. A geography lesson, obviously, you can see the logo of the airport directly in between Charlotte and Atlanta, perfectly positioned to take advantage of aerospace, manufacturing, production, and any business that needs just-in-time international air freight between those two markets. We did the distance rules. The 200 miles is obviously where most truckers are going to go out and back so they can come home for dinner at night. But many of them will run longer haul. So the 500-mile radius gets us a significant amount of coverage. And we recognize that even in some cases, that distance is being covered by freight that comes and goes from GSP. We did the work to look at where our influence really was. And since most freight that moves in the traditional global freight forwarders systems moves to Chicago or JFK for international lift, we wanted to see how competitive we were at GSP. So this slide resonates very well with the folks who are in the business of moving freight from an origin in the States to a gateway to get to an international destination. We're significantly advantaged on the cost of truck and therefore the time of truck all the way down to Houston in terms of a better solution for freight that wants to get out of GSP rather than having to go all the way to Chicago. E-commerce is an important part of what's driving air cargo and the challenges that you're facing if you try to move cargo. And given the fact that Pitney Bowes expects this business will double in the next couple of years, from 100 to almost 200 billion pieces, significant more pressure is going to be coming on the international air system to support this movement of product. We're also in the midst of completing a test pilot program for CBP, Customs and Border Protection, for the de minimis rule, which is the Section 321 clearance. And that will allow customs to have the visibility into the shipper, the marketplace host, the buyer, and the commodity to make sure that when they look at an array of shipments in an airliner, that they can differentiate which is the higher risk and the lower risk materials. This is simply a narrative from Seco Air Freight. They're involved in managing e-commerce. And anybody who gets to say from January last year to January 2021, I had a 545% increase in my order volume. That's a stunning number. It's indicative of where we are with e-commerce and where we're going with e-commerce. We're strategically positioned in South Carolina because we also have a 5-state parcel sortation center in Greenville that can receive freight and process it into the system. Currently, that system receives cargo from JFK, domestic freight coming or import freight coming through China Post to JFK, and it's a 7 to 10 day dwell time before it's processed into the U.S. Postal Service system. Something we can compete with and improve significantly for users who need the e-commerce service. Our friends at Amazon have been busy. These are the airports that they support. They've also built out an Intra-Europe network. But this is a key for understanding why Greer in the upstate is more significantly well positioned to support warehousing distribution of goods and services rather than a location in Atlanta or Charlotte. And I have the details from each of the 1-day and 2-day networks that I can show you. Send me an email and be happy to share this in detail, because it really does prove that a location in the upstate in Greer or near GSP or near the inland port is a better solution from a population reach standpoint. For you folks, the ask is simply this: I'm going to come to you in one form or another, either by email or directly, and want to know who inside your house is responsible for international air cargo, and who in your house selects the 3PL. And so we've done the work to look at who the service providers are in the aerospace industry, in the automotive industry, which is a very strong business in the 5 states. And again, we've moved it beyond just the South Carolina, but are inclusive of the automotive industry in other states. North Carolina has a very robust aerospace industry, and they're on my list of things that need to be done in terms of turning over the pieces of information that would support the growth of GSP's service to the aerospace industry. We also looked at the cold storage industry. This industry is on a 9 to 10% growth worldwide. So a lot of opportunity for us to enter into that space and capture business from across the state and across the region. And then we looked at the OEM tier 1 suppliers. Again, while many of them are focused on BMW, I've been through this list and know that a lot of those companies also support other OEMs in the US. And we will expand that from just German automotive tier 1s to the EU, so that we have a complete format of who's moving cargo. We also looked at the largest employers, taking away the services industries. And so we have a select group of folks here that are quite valuable in terms of adding volume to the effort. So I wanted to be conscious of my time. Stephen said I could have about 30 minutes, and I think we're pretty close to that. Here's the ask. You never get to do one of these things if there's not an ask attached to the conversation. And that is, if you move, manage, control, or pay for international cargo, I want to know where your pain is. I want to know your routes. I want to know who your forwarders or logistics partners are and your volumes. And I'd love to hear from you. One way or another, I'm going to come find you if you're in the aerospace industry. It may take me a while, but it'd be better if I get an email that says, hey, this is what we do. Come see us next time you're in South Carolina. And let's talk about how GSP could be a solution for us. So obviously we want to create a model to have a conduit to you to talk about what we're doing as we build out the initiative for air cargo in South Carolina and in Greenville. But we also want to make sure that you have the ability to use this, and therefore you understand what we're doing, so that you can accelerate your growth as an industry, but also you can create opportunities to be more competitive as a company worldwide, because you have an air cargo solution that satisfies your need for faster to market service. And Stephen, I'm going to open it up to Q&A. Nathan and I can get back on, and let's, if there are any questions or something come up in the chat, Alex, let us know.
Great, thank you. And we haven't, I don't see anybody in the chat that has a question. So we're just going to open it up. If people want to unmute themselves, feel free to ask Steve or Nathan a question, or if you just have a comment, we can kind of make this an open dialogue. So go ahead.
Hi, Steve. Courtney Maroos here with Avis & Young in Charleston. Thank you so much. Every time I hear pieces of this dialogue, I take something away. So thank you. And Stephen, thank you for having us listen in. A question for you: how do we connect the dots to, does this have any impact on Columbia Airport from, UPS being there? And any recommendations on how we go about approaching this kind of conversation or introducing you to some of the aerospace suppliers or those who do move freight from an actual industry direct standpoint.
UPS in Columbia is a resource that supports their network into and out of Louisville. I don't know close enough to know if there's an international connection there. Most of the cargo that moves in their system goes to their central hub before it's processed for the global origin destination. I think what we're developing is an air freight service that, other than Senator, has never existed in South Carolina before. We're talking about 747s that will be seen going, across or literally around the globe to support the needs of the users. And I go back to Columbus and say, there's a model for how to do this. There's a model in Huntsville for how to do this, although that's more a model that shows DSV Panalpina as the hub operator for their global system in Huntsville. There's a great deal of demand in the last year. Rockford Airport in Chicago, which is about 70 miles to the west of Chicago, has become a major center for freight just because of the congestion and the challenges of doing business in Chicago. If you do business in Atlanta, it's a challenge. We recognize that, and we want to create a solution. The opportunity to talk to tier one suppliers or suppliers in the aerospace industry and in the aerospace sector started today with this conversation about this is what we're doing, this is what we want to do, this is the input we need from this industry sector. And so Stephen and I are going to have a lot of conversations going forward about how do I interact with key players, key stakeholders in this industry sector. And I'm doing this across the SC Competes program to make sure that as we look sector by sector, we have the best opportunity to reach into the people who would use this and who would benefit and therefore either be more competitive or grow or both. And obviously that's the benefit of creating jobs and opportunities and frankly wealth in South Carolina, which is ultimately the objective. Selfishly, I want to see it happen because I think the GSP staff have a vision for an opportunity to create something unique and useful in South Carolina. And they've committed to the resources to make sure that we do the work to build a platform that will resonate across a whole lot of stakeholders, including aerospace, to grow this industry.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and Courtney, if I could just follow up too, I think having this webinar was a good first step for us to start this conversation, and we're going to follow up with trying to connect Steve specifically to some of our advisors that are on our advisory board, and then promoting this content through the other means that we reach out and touch all our aerospace companies, whether it's our newsletter or YouTube. And trying to be an advocate for what's going on here is kind of going to be our way forward now. So
excellent. Will you guys be releasing some type of? Is there some type of package or something that we'd be able to share with other people?
Yeah, we're creating a flyer. In fact, Nathan and I had that on our conversation, a short one-page brief of this. But any of this material in this slide deck, Stephen, if you can make it available or make a link available on the recording, it's a shareable material. I've shared this across South Carolina with all 7 of the major of the alliances. Both in some cases with both their existing and new business teams. So this is beginning to get into the Ethernet, the ether of South Carolina. People are beginning to understand what we're building. So if there's someone that you want to send this to, love to see it go. Copy me if you will. so that I know who it went to. But all of us pulling together will make the conversation more eloquent, but it'll also make it easier to row the boat toward the success that we see as creating a solution in South Carolina that really resonates with people who move cargo on an international basis.
Thank you.
All right, anybody else have any questions or comments?
Thank you, Stephen. I appreciate the time to be with your members this morning. Look forward to the next opportunity as we move this forward. We'll want to certainly come back when it's appropriate to update your team.
Great, thanks, Steve, and thank you, Nathan, for signing on today. And before we depart, I just have to recognize our partners. Without our partners from our companies and also from the South Carolina Department of Commerce, webinars like this would not be possible. So thank you to our partner companies, and thank you to all of you for signing in today and being part of this discussion. And we hope you have a great week. Thanks.